So I'm sure, as you know by now, that we have these drone sightings that are popping up all over the place. They've been popping up mostly over New Jersey, but New York and in Pennsylvania. And and obviously this brings up a tremendous amount of questions. Where are they coming from? Who's flying them? And why are they here? And I guess the thing that really kind of bothers me is we don't know. We have no idea. Our government has no idea what is going on with these drones. And what we don't want another, Chinese spy balloon, that flies over Alaska, crests over Canada, and then flies the entirety of the U.S. from west to east. And then we finally shoot it down when it's over the eastern seaboard. God knows how much information was transmitted out of that spy balloon that came over. And, from China. We all know it's from China. Yeah, I mean, come on. We know it's from China. But now we have these drones that are popping up. Now, get this. These drones are huge. These things are up to 6 feet in length. And think about that. Think about that for a minute. That's 2 inches longer than I am tall. That is the size of this table, which you can't see, but this table is a pretty good sized table. It is 6 feet by 4 feet. So basically, it's the size of this table. That is massive. That is massive. Now, why is it this big? Okay, and this brings me to, I guess, my first question. It's this big because supposedly they're saying these things are flying up to 6 hours. Now, I want to know how they know that information. How do they know that they're flying up to 6 hours? Because in order to say, well, they've been flying for 6 hours, okay, then what time did they take off and what time did they land? Because if you can tell me when they took off and when they landed, then you can also tell me where they took off and landed from. If you can tell me that much, you can tell me that. So are they flying for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours? Because if you think about it, the battery inside that, if it is truly flying that long, has to be relatable to the battery inside of, let's say, a Tesla or a GM EV. Let's just say an EV, not a Tesla. It has to be roughly the same size. And if it's flying for 6 hours, if you get inside of a fully charged EV, you can go about 6 hours before you got to stop and recharge. So obviously, the size of the batteries in these things have to be somewhere that of a car. Has to be. Because I have drones. I have DJI drones that I fly around for video purposes. And depending on the weather, I can fly from 20 to 30 minutes. And that's if I'm flying it wide open, as fast as it'll go, which mine, I think, go like 36 miles an hour, as fast as it can go. All right. So if these are flying for 6 hours, and keep in mind, the faster I fly it at distance, my time becomes much shorter. If I fly it at a medium speed, I can probably get a full 30 minutes out of it. If I fly it wide open, I'm more than likely going to get about 20 minutes out of it. Takes a lot more power to generate that speed, like it does in anything. So that brings up a million questions on these drones. A million questions. So Harris Faulkner sat down with Jeff Van Drew, and I'm going to play a little bit of this video for you because he says from very qualified sources that they're coming from Iran, that Iran has parked a mothership off of the coast of America. So watch a little bit of this video here.
We have objects in the sky that are the size of an SUV over any city, over any state. It's an invasion of our airspace. In focus now, Republican Congressman Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, member of the House Judiciary Committee on the Hill right now. How do you address this at this point?
Well, here's the real deal, Harris. I'm also on the Transportation Committee, on the Aviation Subcommittee, and I've gotten to know people. And from very high sources, very qualified sources, very responsible sources, I'm going to tell you the real deal. Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones. That mothership is off, I'm going to tell you the deal. It's off the east coast of the United States of America. They've launched drones, is everything that we can see or hear. And again, these are from high sources. I don't say this lightly. Now, we know there was a probability it could have been our own government. We know it's not our own government because they would have let us know. It could have been some really glorified hobbyist or hobbyists that were doing something unbelievable. They don't have the technology. But let's pretend that's possible. The third possibility was somebody, an adversarial country, doing this. Know that Iran made a deal with China to purchase drones, motherships, and technology in order to go forward.
Now, to me, that's the most likely scenario because we know that the Chinese, they dominate drone technology, dominate it. I mean, nobody else is even close to what China's doing in drone technology. My DJI is a Chinese drone. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, those things have become, I mean, it's insane what I can do. I can literally turn it on, tell it to follow me, and I can do whatever I want to do. I can run around buildings, I can run through the woods, and it'll just go around the trees, and it'll just continue to track me and follow me. It's crazy what these drones, the capability of these drones are. But let's put that in perspective what he said, all right? He said, it's not our government because they would tell us. Bullshit, they would tell us. They absolutely would not tell us. Hell, we still don't know everything that's going on in Area 51. And it's been going on for how many years now? They're not going to tell us anything. We still don't know who killed JFK. Well, we know it was the CIA, but, we haven't physically read, what's going on. Our government would hide that from us in a heartbeat, and especially the current government we have right now. Joe Biden's government, what I like to call the shadow government, the cloak and dagger government, we have no idea what this government has been the least transparent government of any government in my lifetime. We have no idea what Biden's government is doing. And if they were doing this, they sure as hell wouldn't tell us. Now, would I suspect our government? No, I would not, because they're flying over some military installations that we've already got the information on, so there's no reason we would do that. And they're flying over Trump's house up in New Jersey. Now, that I would suspect our government. I mean, come on. They filed how many bullshit cases against him? I mean, how many did they file? So that I would suspect. But my sensible brain is telling me, okay, it's not our government. There's no reason for our government to be doing this, because if they were doing this for technology-wise and they'd be testing it, they wouldn't be testing it over populated areas where everybody can go, hey, look, there's something in the sky. So that alone tells me that is not our government, all right? Now, this isn't a hobbyist. And if anybody thinks this is a hobbyist, then they're absolutely idiots. These drones are going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce. Hell, the battery in these things is probably going to be 20, 30, 40 grand, 50 grand per drone. And there's multiple drones. And if it was a hobbyist, hey, all these drones are flying all over the place. Oh, yeah, they took off from John's house last night. I saw them. Because a drone that size is not going to be quiet. Unless you're flying that dude out, you're taking off out of a bunker that you spent the last 20 years building with a big hydraulic platform that sinks you down into the desert. Because even my little drones, when I take them off, my neighbors can hear them. When I just shoot them off, as little as they are, they're still loud. Even when I run the quieter props on them, they're still loud. Now take my drone and multiply that by 30. And then you get this drone. This thing's going to be insanely loud. I mean, insanely loud. So somebody's going to hear it lift off and take off and land, especially if there's multiple of these doing this. Now, another thing is they're saying, they say they're flying for up to 6 hours. All right. First off, how do we know they're flying for up to 6 hours? Because are we seeing them up there for 6 hours? And if they're up there for 6 hours, we have not yet contained one? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. You find an area that's not heavily populated, you shoot it down. Problem solved. Because it's been flying over a water aquifer is where it started flying at. That'd have been the perfect place to shoot one down. Absolute perfect place. So you say they're flying for 6 hours. Okay. But how do you know it's 6 hours? Like I said, is that because you've been seeing them up there? And if you're seeing them up there for 6 hours, that means they're flying for 8, 10, 12 hours. Because they had to come from somewhere to get there, because they're not taking off out of New Jersey. Like I said, 1 million people would see them take off and land. 1 million people would. And now we're what? This has been going on since mid-November, so we're a month into this, and nobody has seen anything. And I guess that's what amazes me, that we're a month into it, and we have no more information now than we did a month ago. We found bin Laden in a hole on the other side of the world. Mangione, the CEO assassin, we found, before we even knew who this guy was, we found pictures of him 2 weeks before he arrived to shoot that guy on a Greyhound bus. We didn't know his name. We had no information on this guy at all. But we found pictures of him arriving into the city. before we even knew anything about the guy. So we can do all that with our technology, but we can't figure out where a drone's coming from. Well, they're saying, well, the drones, they turn their lights off. And they go into like a stealth mode. And, because of their technology, we can't track them. I call bullshit on that. Now, granted, a signature of something 6 foot is going to be hard to track in the airspace because that is small. You compare that to a fighter jet, which again is 10 times bigger than that drone. So that is small. And I understand that would be hard to track. But what I don't understand, hey, there's a drone up there. Hey, there's 8 drones up there, and they've been up there for 6 hours. Where's the Apache helicopters? Where are they at? Why aren't the helicopters? Why hasn't the military completely helicoptered that bitch off and get one of these things, surround it, and see where it goes? How hard is that to do? How hard is that to do to see where that drone goes? Well, they turn the lights off. We can't track it. All right, then throw a couple of helicopters on it with some very bright spotlights and just follow it. I'm going to tell you now, it's not going to outrun an Apache. I'm going to tell you now, it probably doesn't have the distance of an Apache, being that it's battery powered, unless they've done something amazing with the batteries that I'm aware of. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be able to outmaneuver an Apache. And I could probably stop faster and things like that. It could bank harder. But the Apache can make up with that simply from the power and the speed of the Apache is going to be overwhelming. So why don't we just follow the drone? And if you're like, well, it'd be hard for one helicopter to follow it. Okay, then put 10 on it. That's your job. Government, military, that's your job. And then we have the people on here and they're saying, well, the drones, they're really not, a threat. How do we know they're not a threat? Just the fact that they're here and we don't know anything about them, that makes it a threat. So we have 2 Republican in the Jersey Shore area, Congressman Chris Smith and Jeff Van Drew, who you just saw, have called for the military to shoot the drones down. Smith said a Coast Guard commanding officer briefed him on an incident over the weekend in which dozens of drones followed a motorized Coast Guard lifeboat in close pursuit. Okay? That sounds like a threat to me. Coast Guard Lieutenant Luke Pinio told the Associated Press Wednesday that multiple low-altitude aircraft were observed in the vicinity of one of our vessels near Island Beach State Park. Why? What are they doing? To me, that sounds like a threat. If they're following these boats around, that sounds like a threat to me. Are they drug runners? Are they drug runners? Because, the cartels have got the money to do something like that. They could dump billions into that because they make billions. They make billions like it's nothing. And maybe they're just trying to track out where the Coast Guard's going. And see, that's the problem because we don't know. We don't know anything. The aircraft weren't perceived as an immediate threat and didn't disrupt operations. No, they're an immediate threat because they're here. We don't know where they're coming from. So that makes them an immediate threat. Let's see. The Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Sy told reporters Wednesday that our initial assessment here is that these are not drones. These are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary. All right. And I guess this is the part that really kind of frustrates me. We know it's not coming. Let's assume it's not coming from our government. Because I don't understand. Like I said, if they were testing these secretly, they wouldn't be testing them over New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York. They wouldn't be doing that. So let's take the government out. We know it's not a hobbyist because the hobbyist simply couldn't afford it. I mean, like I said, the batteries in these things are $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000. And there's multiple of them. There's multiple. So we know it's not a hobbyist. I mean, and like I said, what's he going to do? 10 massive 6-foot drones are going to take off out of his driveway in the middle of the night and nobody's going to see or hear that. So we know it's not a hobbyist. We can eliminate that altogether. I don't think it's a company doing drone research because A, they couldn't just willy-nilly fly these drones over the city without FAA letting them do that. The FAA has to be aware that you're going to fly something that big over a city. And they crack down on that pretty hard. So we know it's not a business here in the United States because they would have to file that with the FAA and it would be easy to track. It would be very easy to track. So we know it's not that. because all drones in the United States have to have an FAA number on them, and they have a chip in them. As soon as I turn my drone on now, because I've got one of the newer drones, the FAA can track everywhere my drone is going right now. So if they were doing that, well, fine, they didn't put the chips in them. Still, no company is going to risk, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in these drones flying it over a city that's going to get them fined God knows how much for violating FAA airspace and FAA rules. So we can take that off the table. So that leaves one thing, a foreign entity. That's it. Now, this guy says Iran has popped a mothership boop, boop, over off the East Coast. So think about that for a minute, that they have made a deal with China for drone technology. Well, they've got the money because Joe Biden gave them the money. So we know Iran has the money thanks to Joe Biden. So they got the technology. China made the drones for them. They're piloting the drones. All right. But this brings up another question. They didn't park this mothership at a pier off of New York. And, the guys that drive the mothership are out there drinking beers and partying while the drone pilots are on the boat. This thing has to be miles out into sea. It has to be in international waters. Because if it was within our waters, we would pick it up instantly and we would know exactly where it's at. So it has to be sitting out in international waters. But if it's sitting out in international waters, how come we don't have satellites that can track this boat? There's too many unanswered questions here. I mean, Jesus, we got satellites that can take high detailed pictures of just about anything in this world, but we can't find a boat sitting off of the eastern seaboard of the United States. But that brings up another question. If these are using battery technology, which they have to be, because like I said, if these things were gas powered, you would hear them. These things are flying up above New Jersey and they're quiet. Have you ever heard an Apache? Have you ever been close to an Apache while it's running? Dude, it will knock your eardrums out of your ears. They're so freaking loud. They can be 2,000 feet up and they're insanely loud when they come over, going over to the base over here. They're crazy loud. So we know they're not gas powered. So that means they have to be battery powered. All right. But if they're parking this ship miles in international waters off of our eastern seaboard, all right, how long is it going to take them to make that flight from there to New Jersey? And then they were flying around to New Jersey for 6 hours, and then they got to fly back. So there's just too many questions that are that are unanswered right now. Because let's say it takes them, I have no idea how fast these drones can fly. I have no idea. But let's say for all intent and purposes, it takes them 2 hours to fly from international waters to New Jersey. Let's say they're that fast. They can do it in 2 hours. And then they're flying around in New Jersey for 4 to 6 hours. And let's say 6. Because they said 6 hours. I've heard too many things that said they're flying for up to 6 hours. So now we have 8. So now they got to fly 2 hours back. All right. Now we have 10 hours. 10 hours. I don't know of a battery that can do that. I've watched a million of these companies that are making these drones for people to drive in. The next step, in transportation. And they're getting 20, 30 minutes max out of these things. Now, the problem is they're batteries. They're not putting in a ton of batteries in them because they got to put a human being in it and, all the safety controls that come with having a human being in there. So it adds a tremendous amount of weight. So in order to save weight, they're making these things out of carbon fiber and composites, titanium. And of course, they got to put the smallest battery that will do the job in as possible. If you're flying just a box with some cameras on it and 4 props, you can put a pretty big ass battery in there. But that thing's going to have to be very big if it's flying off of the eastern seaboard, international waters, all the way to New Jersey, all the way back to that ship. You're looking at 10 hours worth of flight time. And I don't even know of any car that is an EV that will do that. I don't know of a single one. If you fully charge a Tesla, you're going to drive about 6 hours before that thing's bone-ass empty, and then you got to stop and charge it. So if that's the case, if they're coming off a mothership, then that means they got to be flying into the States, being recharged, then flying around, being recharged, and then flying back out. There's no way it's going to fly from international waters off the eastern seaboard all the way to New Jersey and back. I don't even know if it could make that flight alone, let alone come over here and check shit out. I mean, that sounds insane to me. The only way it could possibly do that is if they had this thing and they had double stacked 2 car batteries like that come out of a Tesla on top of it. Then maybe it's achievable. But also, this thing's going to be shockingly heavy at this point. Tremendously heavy, which again is going to diminish the ability of the battery. So I don't see how they're flying that distance and getting over here. But that is the most logical thing in my mind, that they're from a foreign entity. We have no reason for them, a hobbyist isn't doing it, simply couldn't afford it, don't have the technology. No reason for a company to be doing something like that because, a company's base premise is to sell product. And, they're all the ones I know of are working on transportation type drones because, as the first person who gets that approved and funded, they're going to make millions off of it. Absolute millions. Everybody in the world is going to buy one of those damn things. Let's assume it's not our own government, which chances are it could be. It could be. And I'm just saying let's assume it's not. But if you look at all the factors involved, the most likely case is our own government. But why would they be flying it over New Jersey, over residential areas, over an aquifer? That's the only reason why I would say, well, it's not our government. They would be flying them somewhere over the desert where nobody can track them, where there's, to where you can close the airspace off like over Area 51. Because you can't fly over Area 51. So that's where they would be testing them, where people can't come over and, oh, sure, let's take some pictures of them like they're doing now. So let's take our government off the table, which means it has to be coming from a foreign entity. But in order to make that flight, I don't know how it could be coming anywhere but from Canada. I just simply don't. Because in order for that damn thing to fly from international waters off the eastern seaboard to New Jersey, I mean, my God, that thing's going to have the ability to fly for 8 to 10 hours because it's got to fly across the water, across Pennsylvania or New York, get all the way into New Jersey, fart around up there for 4 to 6 hours, and then fly all the way back. But before I wrap this up, this brings me to my last question about this. Like I said, we can find bin Laden hiding in a hole on the other side of the planet. But nobody is seeing these things come and go. Because even if they say, well, they're turning the lights off and blah, 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 somebody somewhere is standing on a beach in New York and there's an aircraft going over. Okay, well, that gives us a lot of information. Now we know it's going out to sea. So maybe the Iranian ship is out there. Because these things have been seen flying over Donald Trump's home in New Jersey. And it just so happens that the Iranians have a standing hit contract on Donald Trump. That kind of makes sense. But how are they getting them that distance? That is the question. If it is Iran, how are they getting them from that distance? But the thing that baffles me the most, and then I'm closing this off, is how does our government have no idea what's going on in our own airspace? How is that even fathomable? I can't even, that is an impossibility to me that our government does not know what's going on. Because whoever owns these drones, they have to know that at one point, one's going to get shot down. And they don't seem to care. But at one point, we're going to have to intercept one of these drones. Because they're saying, well, they really don't pose a threat. Well, bullshit. They pose a massive threat because they're here in the United States. But how do we know nothing about these drones? We know nothing about them. Hell, we can track a bullet, a fragment of a bullet, all the way back to the damn manufacturer of that bullet. We can find bin Laden in a hole. The CEO killer, Mangione. We got pictures of him. We didn't even know who the guy was. And we found pictures of him before he even got to New York, 2 weeks before he got there on a Greyhound bus. And we can do all that, but we can't intercept one of 8 drones that are 6 foot big and flying over New Jersey? I don't know. It just seems awful fishy to me. The whole thing just seems fishy to me. The whole thing seems fishy to me. There's something else going on that we don't know about, and we're probably not going to know about it. One thing I can tell you, though, is before Donald Trump takes office, these drones will not be flying over the United States. Because I can tell you now, the day he walks in office, I don't even know what day the day is going to be. But if he walks in on a Tuesday, those drones will be shot down on Tuesday. Mark my words on that.